So a few months ago, I did a review on EcoFlow's sort of revamped River 2 portable power station. And I'll put a link up here if you're interested in checking that out. But we're going to look at another member of this revamped River product line. This is the River 2 Pro. And I just got this, just came in today. Haven't gotten out of the box to take a look at it, so let's do that right now. All right, got some documentation here. Looks like a quick start guide. DIY instructions for how to connect third-party solar panels to this product. A little warranty guide. By the way, this thing has a 5-year warranty on it, as do most of EcoFlow's products. So very cool. All you got to do is register to get 5 years, which is outstanding. And then we've got a little user guide, safety guide here in multiple languages. Let's get this out of the box. So it's I would consider this a mid-range power station in terms of capacity. I think, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's a little over 700 watt hours. I'll put the specifics on the screen here. But we're going to get into all that here in a minute. They do send us a box. Let's see what's in here. All right, so we have got a DC 5521 accessory cable on both ends. And then we have got a nice heavy gauge computer style AC charging cable, which tells me that, again, no charge brick on this thing. So that's welcome. One less thing to have to keep track of. Little silica gel packet. And then we've got our car charger with an XT60. Actually, this is an XT60i cable. I'll give you a close-up of this, but you can tell the XT60i, it's got an extra little contact right there in between those two pins. So kind of interesting. And oh, they did send me this. This unit does not come with a solar panel cable, as you saw. It's just these 3 cables here. So if you plan on doing any solar charging with this power station, which a lot of people would like to do, even if you buy the EcoFlow solar panel, you are going to need a cable to get from MC4 to XT60i, or any other solar panel for that matter. You would need to get whatever that solar panel's connectors are, whether it's DC 7909 or 5521, for example, or it could be Anderson, but this thing takes an XT60i connector. So they did send me a cable, and they obviously sell these on their website. I think they're around $25 US. But this is actually a very nice 2.5 meter MC4 to XT60i. And I'm not sure what gauge this is. No, this is 12 gauge cable. Okay, so just so you're aware. Now, I've never really talked about this in other videos before, and I think now's probably as good a time as any, and I'll probably mention it in the future, because it is something that you should be aware of. If you're working with MC4 connectors at all, typically how that works is on the red or the positive lead, you will see a male MC4 connector coming from the power source. So if it's on a solar panel, your cable is coming from a solar panel. On the positive lead, you will see a male MC4 connector. Now, here's a positive lead that's got a female style MC4 connector in it. Now, why is that? Because it's an adapter or extension cable. And so we would plug this red female lead into the red male lead coming from the panel. And that's typically how you'll see that. So if for some reason you ever needed to adapt a different connector, let's say an Anderson connector on a solar panel, maybe to MC4, because that makes it easier to string them in series, for example, you would need a cable that has an Anderson connector on one end, and on the other end, since again, it would be basically doing a connector conversion for you, or connector adaptation, you would need to have the red lead on that adapter cable have a male connector, not a female connector. So maybe an easy way to think about it is on an MC4 connector, the direction the power is coming from, the positive lead, will always be a male connector. And the extension cable from that positive, on the positive side, will be a female connector. So just try to keep that straight, because if you reverse polarity on these, you could damage something. And we don't want that. All right, let's take a closer look at the star of the show. All right, this is the River 2 Pro version, and I'm going to get into the specs, as I said, in a little while. But just a quick overview here. You got your 4 AC outlets. I believe these are supposed to be 120, not 110, so we're going to measure that and make sure. You've got your car socket here. This is a 12.6 volt, I believe, 10 amp car socket, and then you've got a couple DC 5521s, and I think these are 12.6 volt at 3 amps each. And then you've got 3 USB-A connectors, and I would say they're probably all 12 watt. I'll have to confirm that. And then you've got a USB-C connector, which I think is a two-way connector that is a PD 100 watt. So you can charge up to 100 watts through this port, either charging the power station from another source, or you could charge, a laptop like a MacBook Pro or a Microsoft Surface, something that uses PD charging or power delivery on Type-C. This is a really great port for that. Okay, so let me just see what the display looks like. I haven't even turned this on yet. So they shipped it with 28% in this case, 28% state of charge. It's a nice, crisp, sharp display. Nothing to see really there. I don't think it has wireless charging. Again, I'll probably have to confirm that. I know it does have mobile app support, and I really do like EcoFlow's mobile app. So we're going to take a look at that in the course of checking this thing out and see how that works. There's a little vent port on that side for the fans for cooling. There's one on the other side. Won't bother to show you that. And on the back, you can get in there. Again, I'll have to give you close-ups of this, but there's your AC cable connector, and then your XT60i connector for solar input and also car charging. All right, let me go live with this thing for a few weeks and find out how it performs, and I'll report back in about 2 seconds. All right, I'm back. And if by chance you're suspecting that I'm now just growing some, facial hair in an effort to counterbalance the merciless ongoing reduction of hair on the top of my head, well, you'd be correct. Anyway, before we take a look at how the testing went, let's fill in a little more detail on the specs for this River 2 Pro that I didn't cover in the intro. All right, so first of all, as you may or may not be aware, the River 2 Pro is actually a significant update to the original River Pro, and kind of just like this River 2 is an update to the original River. And I'll try and point out some of those differences as we go, but it does seem like EcoFlow has moved away from including a battery expansion option on this new River 2 lineup. So if you really want a battery expansion option, or you need one, you'd want to be looking at their Delta series instead of the River series. So in terms of price, the River 2 Pro is now selling for $599 on both the ecoflow.com website and also on Amazon. And by the way, they did give me a discount code for some additional money off of that price if you buy direct from their ecoflow.com website. So I don't think it's available on Amazon. And per usual, I'll put that in the description below the video if you want to go check that out. So I've already mentioned that the battery on this thing is a 768 watt-hour capacity, and they are now using lithium iron phosphate chemistry, which is a welcome improvement over the original River Pro, and that gives you a rated 3,000 charge and discharge cycles to 80% of the original capacity. Now that's compared to only about 800 cycles on the original River Pro, since it was using that lithium NMC chemistry that you most frequently find on like Jackery products, for example. So another improvement on the River 2 Pro is that the AC inverter is now rated for 800 watts continuous output versus only 600 watts on the original River Pro. And AC charging is also nearly 50% faster on this guy because you can put up to 940 watts AC input on this for a full charge from 0 to 100% in just a little over an hour. So DC charging options on the River 2 Pro include a solar input max of 220 watts, which is again a slight improvement over the original River Pro. And that input range on the solar input is 11 to 50 volts at up to 13 amps. And by the way, EcoFlow does now offer a 220 watt portable solar panel option that is perfectly spec'd for this River 2 Pro and allows you to max out that solar input. Now I have the 110 watt version of that panel, and while I have to say I'm not a huge fan of how they use the protective sleeve for the panel as its kind of leg stand, I must admit that the panel itself is extremely high quality and is easily one of the most durable portable panel designs that you're going to find. And I think they do have some special bundle pricing on the River 2 Pro along with that panel going on right now. And again, the links are in the description below if you want to go check those out. Now, I think I mentioned previously that the PD 100 watt Type-C port on this thing is bidirectional. So you can actually charge the River 2 Pro via that port, but the unit will always prioritize AC charging over DC charging. So it doesn't support dual charging. So you might want to be aware of that. But that makes sense because the AC charging on this thing is already crazy fast. And then finally, you can obviously charge this also with the included car charger cable at up to an input of 100 watts. Okay, let's move on to the performance testing, and we'll also take a look at the EcoFlow mobile app, what you can do with that, maybe also what you can't do with that, and then we'll see how the UPS mode actually performs. All right, let's do a DC discharge test and find out how much capacity we get on this River 2 Pro through the DC output. So let me go ahead and enable the DC port, and we'll check back when this thing has run its course and find out how much capacity we got. All right, the DC discharge capacity test is done. Let's take a quick look here. Looks like 650 watt hours. And that is out of a rated 768 watt hours. All right, while we're doing the AC discharge test, let's find out exactly what kind of voltage these AC plugs are outputting here. As you can see, we're getting a full 120 volts. So again, that's outstanding. And we got 673 watt hours out of 768 rated. Pretty decent. Alright, so this AC inverter on the River 2 Pro is rated for 800 watts continuous and 1600 watts peak. So we're going to test the continuous, and we're going to see if we can run pretty much an 800 watt load here all the way down. So I've got it charged at 100%. This should run for, I don't know, 45 or 50 minutes or so would be my guess. I'm going to put an 800 watt load on it. That's an oil heater I got plugged in here. So let me go ahead and turn this on. And I'm going to go ahead and start the counter, the stopwatch. We'll just see how long it goes. But you can see we're pulling just under 800 watts. And we're going to make sure that we can run this continually without having the unit shut down on us. And while we're doing this, let's just go ahead and take the time to take a look at the EcoFlow app. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the EcoFlow app. You see here I have 3 different EcoFlow models, and it's picking up the River 2 Pro there at 100%. So I'm going to click on that one, and we can see that it's estimating 47 minutes remaining. We are currently outputting 749 watts. Alright, so let's go under the little gear in the upper right hand corner and see what we've got there. We can rename this. I already have. AC charging speed. So this is where I can throttle this down from 940 watts all the way down to 100 watts. So if I'm not in a hurry, why stress the batteries? I can charge it at a much lower rate, and it's much easier on the batteries. So I'm just going to put it kind of maybe around 400 watts or so. All right, and then you can set the car input. So when you're charging via the car, you can choose to charge at 8 amps, 6 amps, or 4 amps. So that's nice. Actually, that's pretty cool that you can do that. Now, XBoost is something that allows you to run things that normally draw in excess of 800 watts continuous, and it sort of caps you at 800 watts continuous. And this is really good for resistive loads, but not so much for things with complex circuitry. A microwave oven, for example, or an air conditioner is not going to like that. So you only want to use XBoost with simple things like lights and maybe space heaters and things like that. So I usually leave XBoost off, but we're going to actually do a demo after we run this test, and we'll see how that works. So discharge level on the battery. This is really nice because this allows me to say I only want to discharge the battery down to, say, maybe 30%. And that allows me to overall not stress the batteries as much, the cells. It allows me to extend the overall functional life of this unit if I don't need a 100% depth of discharge. So it's nice that you can do that, and you can do that on charging as well. So I can normally fully charge it to 100%, but again, I can extend the life significantly if I just actually moved it down to 90%, and that would add some life to this battery if I didn't need the full capacity. So it's just kind of cool that you have that option. You can set the screen timeout. That is super handy. I'm going to just put that to never. Those things don't consume much power, and I hate it when they go out too soon. AC timeout. This is so basically, if I don't pull a certain amount of power through the AC inverter within the time period that I set, it'll automatically turn off the AC inverter to keep it from consuming power when I'm not using it. And you can see we can disable that. We have the option to set that to never if we have a very low or very intermittent power draw and we don't want it to shut off without us knowing about it. So that's kind of nice. I'm going to leave mine at 4 hours. I think that's a pretty good default. I also really like this. I can go in and look at the specifications. So if I'm like, geez, what is the maximum AC inverter load on this thing, I can come in here and look at that. I can see that my AC output is 100 or 800 watts, surging up to 1600 watts. And it gives me all the specs. I don't have to, if I misplace the manual, I don't have to go hunting it down. So it's just nice to be able to look that stuff up via the app. And of course you can set your temperature units, Celsius or Fahrenheit. So gives you pretty much everything you need. And yeah, pretty happy with the EcoFlow app. Let's go ahead and let this thing run. I've talked long enough, and we'll check back when this thing is fully depleted, or sooner if it cuts us off ahead of time. Hopefully not. I guess I'll have to check the recording to see how long that it lasted, but it was probably somewhere around 50 minutes. But it did not shut us off at basically just under 800 watts continuous. So that checks out. All right, let's find out what happens when we push this 800 watt AC inverter beyond 800 watts. I've got an oil-filled heater on the floor here, just out of shot. And then we're going to use this in a second as a little bit of a supplemental source that pulls a little more watts. So we're going to see what happens if I try to throw 1500 watts at this right out of the gate. So let me go ahead and turn on the AC inverter. And let me go ahead and turn on the 1500 watts. And we'll see if it kills it immediately. You can see we got an overload immediately. So you didn't even see the output watts count up at all. Just an immediate overload. All right, so you'll see it reset all by itself. Right, we didn't have to power it down or anything. We're going to turn the AC inverter back on. And now I'm going to turn on roughly an 800 watt load. You can see we're immediately pulling in the upper 700s, about 750. Now let's go ahead and add this little heater here. This is going to kick it up another couple hundred watts. So you can see we're registering 1000 watts. Kind of surprised it's letting us go this long. Okay, so that was just a little over 20 seconds, maybe 25 seconds, and then it cut us off. So we ran close to 1000 watts, which is 200 watts over the rated continuous, for about 30 seconds. That's with XBoost off. So let's run that same test with XBoost turned on. All right, so I'm going to go into the little settings here, and XBoost is right there. I'm going to go ahead and enable XBoost. All right, and with XBoost turned on, we're going to run the same test. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the AC inverter. I've already got the oil filter, or the I've got the oil heater on the 800 watt load, which is actually just a little under 800 watts. Now watch what happens when I kick this guy on. Instead of reading 1000 watts, we're just hovering right above 800 watts. And let's give this a little bit of time here. And since these are simple resistive loads, no complex electronics involved, it's perfectly safe to do that. It'll just run this in a slightly lower power state, so it doesn't put out quite as much heat as it would otherwise. But you can see we're hanging on right around 800 watts. So it's keeping us right at its continuous rated output. So instead of tripping overload, it's letting us run these higher watt draw devices, but at a lower power state. And that's what XBoost does. All right, let's do a quick check on the UPS mode capability of this River 2 Pro. Now you can see here I've got it charged to 100%, and I've got AC power coming in the back, which you can't see, but trust me, there's a cable there. And you can see that I'm inputting basically 32 watts and outputting 32 watts. So once you get to 100%, what you'll start seeing here is the input and output watts will basically line up for the most part. So that's basically giving us pass-through charging. Now I have the battery removed from my old sacrificial Windows 7 laptop. So once it loses power, it will go out immediately, no matter how fast you try to plug it back in. So we're going to find out if that UPS switchover time is fast enough to keep this old laptop from shutting down once it switches over from pass-through power to battery power. So we're going to simulate a power outage by pulling the AC cable in the back, and we'll keep an eye on the laptop to see if it does anything. So let's give it a shot. 3, 2, 1. All right, nothing happened Laptop is still running. And just to show you, if I were to try to do this very quickly with the laptop plugged in, whoops, let me get that back. Right, no matter how fast I try to plug that back in, I can't do it within milliseconds, and the laptop shuts down. So, UPS mode confirmed. All right, so some final thoughts on the new River 2 Pro power station. Like the smaller River 2, this is a very solid all-around performer. And really the only minor kind of misses that I can think about are the lack of wireless charging and that the mobile app doesn't actually allow you to turn the outputs on or off, which I was a little surprised by since the app is otherwise very functional and it does have a modern, easy-to-use user interface. But really, I kind of think of those things as more of a, nice to have spec rather than a need to have spec, my personal opinion. But I'd also point out that it'd be nice to have had a full 1000 watts continuous AC output on this instead of just 800 watts, since that's about what you would need to run, say, a coffee maker or an electric kettle. And I think those are common use cases. And that remains a bit of a gap in their product line since EcoFlow doesn't really have a 1000 watt option. And you'd kind of actually need to jump up to the Delta 2 with its 1800 watt continuous inverter. And by the way, the Delta 2 remains one of my best in class picks. If you haven't seen that video, you can check that out right here. But all that said, the 5-year warranty, the switch to the lithium iron phosphate chemistry for maximum service life, the ability to use UPS mode, and the just all-around solid performance of the River 2 Pro does make it a pretty compelling option in that sort of sub 1000 watt-hour capacity class. And let's be honest, there's definitely some value in buying from a well-established brand like EcoFlow when you're buying products like this. So if this sounds like something you might want to go check out, as usual, links are in the description below the video, and be sure to use the discount codes there to get an extra discount on the River 2 Pro or that River 2 Pro and 220 watt solar panel bundle that I mentioned earlier. I believe those deals are valid up to May 3rd of this year, which is 2023, and they are apparently even throwing in a free River 2 Pro bag right now and some bonus eco credit points if those are something you might use, but just for the next week or so, I think up until maybe April 9th. So hey, if you found this video helpful at all, please consider clicking that thumbs up button. I would really appreciate that. And hey, if I've missed anything or something you might still have questions about, feel free to leave those comments or questions below. I do try to read all the comments and I answer questions wherever I can. And I do have a bunch of interesting new products in the queue already, so I hope you'll stay tuned for those. Anyway, thanks for watching this one, and I do hope you'll join me in the next one. And until then, have fun out there.